Am I audible? Yes or no?
Yes, Anuj, yes.
Okay. All right. Today we are discussing about managing competitors. Now, last few weeks you have been discussing about managing customers with Dr. Nuwan. With respect to managing competitors, I would be discussing with you the importance of competitor analysis, which is also known as competitor accounting, techniques used for competitor accounting, sources of data collection in competitor accounting, problems with competitor accounting, and in your prescribed textbook written by Lee 2018, there is an analytical framework for competitor analysis, and I would be discussing that. And finally, Mr. Chamak Sirivardhana would be discussing with you about the accounting professional's role in competitor accounting. Actually, I would be discussing mainly the theoretical underpinnings and some examples, but actually, practically, how it happens will be discussed by Mr. Chamak Sirivardhana, bringing in the process that happens in his own organization. Market intelligence, that is about understanding your market. In your market, there are customers who have needs. Therefore, you have to manage your customers, and that is what you have already discussed. However, these customer needs are fulfilled not only by the business organization that is considered, which is considered, the term used is the focal business organization. The business organization that is considered the focal business organization. That business organization will not be the only business organization that would fulfill the customer needs. That means the business organization does not operate in a vacuum. There are other players in the marketplace. Those are known. Those players are known as competitors. Therefore, in order to fulfill customer needs, to outsmart the competitors, and to be the market leader, it is important to understand not only the customer needs, but also about your competitors. That is why today we are discussing about managing competitors. So in this process, it is important to understand existing as well as potential competitors. And because we want to outsmart them strategically, and in that process, we need to understand the competitors' short-term strengths and weaknesses and long-term capabilities. That is what they could do better than us in the long term, and their strategies. Now, various researchers have been writing on the importance of competitor analysis. Actually, when speaking about these researchers, Wilson 1994 and Flavel and Williams 1996 state that through competitor analysis, an organization can identify its competitors' strengths and weaknesses, and in this way, it can counteract its competitors to its competitive advantage. So if you understand your competitors, only that you can outsmart your competitors strategically, because we know what tactics, strategies, and apparatus we should use. Then Wilson 1994 states that competitor analysis should be central element in management, planning, and control, with detailed attention being paid to each competitor's objectives, resources, and competitive stance, that is the attitude, as well as to individual elements of its strategy. So in our planning and control process, we have to plan what we are going to do to outsmart our competitors. And for that, a detailed analysis of competitors would be required. And then we have to evaluate and see where we are after we implement our strategies, and control mechanisms should be brought in to rectify any variances that have occurred from the intended plan. Then Wilson 1994 also states that competitor analysis helps decision makers to understand their organization's competitive situation and associated problems. And you see that it is not only understanding the competitors, but also it helps to understand the organization, the so-called organization's existing position, because then only that any gaps could be identified and rectified. And Farewell and Williams 1996 state that competitor analysis helps the organization to avoid the element of surprise. Oh, what have they done? What are we going to do? Such issues will not come up if we have analyzed well our competitors and if we are ready for the game. Techniques used for competitor analysis. Now, you know, the first thing that I told you was, why is it important to carry out competitor analysis? In my overview, I told you that. So that we have discussed. Now, techniques used for competitor analysis. So competitor analysis means competitor accounting. Techniques are competitor cost analysis, competitor price and quality analysis, best practice, which is benchmarking, value chain analysis, competitive position monitoring, industry profitability analysis. Actually, most of these techniques you already know, but it could be related directly when competitor analysis is done. This could be done for other things also, but today the focus is on managing competitors. Therefore, when analyzing your competitors, how these techniques could be used is what is important to be discussed. Now, cost analysis. Can you remember when we had the discussion on cost and value? When we had the discussion on cost and value, Mr. Sohan Patrick, General Manager, Strategic Planning at MS Holdings, said that they were not able to outsmart Brandix with respect to PPE manufacturing. What is PPE? He said, in accounting, we used to call PPE as property, plant, and equipment, but now PPE is commonly known as personal. It's personal protective equipment, PPE. Now, this is a very sad moment You know, my mother, father, and myself, who lived in my home, we all three got COVID. And my father was in the intensive care unit and he passed away. And my mother and I were in a care center. My mother at that time was COVID negative, but I was COVID positive. And therefore, I wasn't able to go for the cremation. But my mother was allowed to go by the care center for the cremation. And at that time, she had to wear a PPE and go because she was going from a red zone, which is where there were patients like me with COVID. So therefore, though she was COVID negative, she had to wear a PPE and go to the cemetery. Now you see that this cost that is being incurred, the care center charged us for the PPE equipment that my PPE that my mother used. But there it required to just to serve the purpose, and after she came back, we had to throw it away. Now you see that the lowest cost, but it should suit the purpose, but the lowest cost should be incurred when manufacturing it. Therefore, we see that MAS, to be competitive, MAS will have to consider what are the costs that Brandix incurred when manufacturing PPE, and then follow that in order to be competitive, because MAS did not outsmart Brandix when manufacturing PPE in Sri Lanka. And actually, this you know that University of Sri Jawadanapura Faculty of Management Studies and Commerce has its annual conference, International Conference on Business Management. And this time it was on the 9th and 10th of December this year, for the 18th time that we had it. And 6 organizations presented 6 success stories on resilience to the COVID-19. The success stories, how strategically they were able to continue their operations, and some business organizations had even generated profits in spite of a crisis situation. And I would be bringing in those examples in this discussion when discussing about the techniques that they have used. Now here I have used about MAS, their PPE manufacturing with respect to cost analysis. So cost analysis, you have to understand what are the costs that are incurred, the cost behavior, and then it is important to make decisions accordingly. MAS also is actually, MAS was mainly engaged in differentiated products. So in differentiated products, what is important is, what are the product attributes? Michael Bromwich says that in cost leadership, you provide a basic product, but in differentiated products, specific attributes are provided. And for those attributes, you can charge a price. But the attributes and the price charge should be aligned. And also in such differentiated products, the exact requirements of the customers, that is, quality means meeting customer requirements, should be met. Therefore, MAS Actually, though it was a company which was providing differentiated products, before the COVID also, they faced a problem that their differentiation was not adequate when compared with the competitors. And with the COVID-19, there was more competition because the customers, they were trying to rationalize their suppliers, and therefore MAS had to be more competitive. And what they did was competitor price and quality analysis. They considered the competitors' products. They actually understood what the product attributes are, the pricing mechanism that the competitors have used, the quality of those products. All these things were evaluated. So we are now discussing about the techniques used in competitor analysis. I said about cost analysis, price analysis, quality analysis, and next. Oh, what is this? Cargills and Keels. Now, you know, with the COVID-19 pandemic, the first wave, right? There was a curfew and we were not able to go out to buy our groceries. But at that time, Cargills did not have a platform to serve their customers, but Keels had. Keels had a platform where they could serve only 1,000 customers for a day. But over time, Keels continued bringing in new features to their platform, and they were able to subsequently cater to around 10,000 customers for a day. Cargills was receiving orders via email, but Cargills also had to move to a platform so that online orders could be accepted. But you see that Cargills was slow in this process when compared with Keels. But you see that you have to move on with your competitors. Otherwise, you lose your customers. Customers had a need. What is the need? The need was grocery shopping without going out, online grocery shopping. This need had to be catered to. So therefore, you see, you don't operate in a vacuum. There are other players. You have to always be on the watch out to what they do. And you can either mimic them or outsmart them. If not, you will have to just close down your business and go into bankruptcy. So best practices. It is important that Cargills had to move on from just email, but having a platform for online grocery shopping. Because this was a practice that was brought in by Keels and other supermarkets like Glowmark. Another example. Finagle bakery products sold in shops owned by the company. Now, what happened at Finagle? Finagle products were mainly sold at supermarkets like Keels. But Keels subsequently started to manufacture their own bakery products and not purchase from Finagle. So now when I was discussing about cost and value, I spoke about value systems, suppliers value chain, business organizations value chain, and customers value chain, that all these value chains should be synchronized and the value system is important to be considered. So Finagle would get raw materials from its suppliers. But how are they going to sell it? What Finagle did was Finagle opened their own shops. A few shops of their own was opened. And through these shops, Finagle started to sell their products. Now you see that in the value chain analysis, it will be important to identify, oh, what are the activities that should be brought in? What are the activities that are non-value adding, which should be excluded? And thereby the value should be catered according to the customer requirements so that the competitors could be outsmarted and you can become a leader in the marketplace. English tea shop, finding a niche within the tea industry in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, there is a government regulation, and according to that the tea business has to be carried out. What English tea shop did was that English tea shop wanted to find a niche. Therefore, they went in for organic production without using anything synthetic. And they had various flavors, and thereby they were able to generate profits, and they were able to generate profits even during a pandemic, a crisis situation. So we see that in turn would help for the company to enhance its competitive position, and also within the industry to be able to outsmart the competitors and be a profitable venture. Now, when we speak about an industry, we see that this is considered Dialog. Now, Dialog is in the telecommunication industry. What are the other players in this industry? Airtel, Mobitel. These are some players within that telecommunication industry. However, there are only a few players in the telecommunication industry. Therefore, it is an oligopoly market. In an oligopoly market, you can generate very high profits. But the regulator, the state, will have rules imposed to ensure that the customers will not be exploited, especially with respect to the telecommunication industry within the Sri Lankan context. Now, with COVID-19 pandemic, Dialog saw seizing opportunities in the wake of inhibited social interactions, because social interactions were inhibited and therefore people were looking for a substitute. So therefore, the Dialog provided products for the employees to provide services required to their industrial customers and retail customers, and products are provided to these industrial customers and the retail customers. However, Dialog was able to do this because of the mother company influence. Dialog had gone in for digitization many years before the COVID-19 hit Sri Lanka. Therefore, they were ready. Therefore, they were able to be in the forefront when compared to other telecommunication companies like Mobitel and other telecommunication companies like Airtel And also you see that Dialog in their CSR activities, corporate social responsibility activities, always consider, oh, what is something that would be of interest to the people? And this year, it was the COVID-19 pandemic. Based on that they carried out CSR activities, and they know that the state should be made happy because they are the regulators. And when they say, oh, these are the CSR activities, so these are the things that we need for you to do to the society, they opted for that. So we see that so many strategies are brought in, and it is within the industry to outsmart the other players that they are doing this. And therefore, it is always important to have your techniques. The techniques are necessary to be used according to the context that is prevailing. And okay, now I spoke to you about why is it important to carry out competitor analysis? Some techniques that could be used in competitor analysis. Now I'm speaking to you about the sources of data collection. Now, data collection can be through recorded data like accounting documents, public information like websites, magazines, newspapers. Then observable data, where you observe things that are happening through personal observation and experience. Then opportunistic data, where you get the opportunity to liaise with your suppliers, your customers, and employees who have been previously working for your competitors. So here, I'm not speaking whether opportunistic data would be an ethical way of getting data or not. Here, my focus is on the sources of data collection. So these sources of data collection could be used to collect data on about your competitors, because it is important to make decisions in order to strategically outsmart your competitors when fulfilling your customer needs in order to be a profitable venture. Problems of competitor analysis. However much it is a good practice, firms being reluctant to share information among themselves due to high volatility of the market is an issue. It is not easy to find the data. And also, the difficulty of quantifying the direct financial benefits of a competitor analysis. The cost-benefit analysis is difficult to be done with respect to competitor analysis. So there are problems, though it is a good thing to be done. Now, this is the framework that I spoke to you about, Lee, 2018 in the textbook. Now, these are, what is this actually trying to tell us? Analytic domain, forecast domain, about competitor analysis, competitor accounting. Now, Lee 2018, Lee is actually, when you read Lee's book, you will understand that based on the frameworks that Lee has used and the language that Lee is using when writing the book, everything revolves around a particular research approach. You know, these days I am marking research methodology answer scripts. And you know, there is a question also on the two research approaches. What are the two research approaches? The quantitative approach and the qualitative approach. Now, Lee is a quantitative researcher. That is crystal clear. Lee 2018 has always tried to bring in conceptual models and try to conceptualize all what is discussed. So in competitor analysis also, according to Lee, based on this entire framework, the framework I have brought in the various sections of conceptualizing into different slides. So first it's competitive analysis. Oh, competitive analysis. Then we see that with respect to a particular market as a whole, or a particular segment that is about focusing, the market that you're focusing on, it is important to consider the competitive position and the market power, which in turn will tell you whether the market capacity is over or under. So you see that competitiveness of a market could be known by the competitive position and market power. So competitiveness in the sense, the market capacity, we know if the market capacity is over, what would happen? Market capacity is under, what would happen? So what is the focus is on the entire market. Within the market, we are trying to conceptualize, bringing in various variables. We are trying to conceptualize, oh, this market is a competitive market or not a competitive market. So in that case, we are trying to focus on the competitive position and market power, and thereby the market capacity. Here, the focus is on the entire market's competitiveness. Now, after analyzing the entire market's competitiveness, we are trying to understand in that market, the competitors who are there. The competitors could be direct competitors, potential competitors, indirect competitors, non-competitors. How are we going to analyze that? Again, we are bringing in some concepts. Market commonality, that is whether they are overlapping with our market. Resource similarity, that in turn means resource-wise, are they having similar resources or not? Based on that, we are categorizing the competitors within the market. So first we have tried to understand the market, then we are trying to understand the competitors in the market. Then we are trying to understand each and every competitor in the market that we have selected. There would be few competitors who are important to be understood because they may be our biggest rivals. So we select them and we analyze. So that is why interfirm analysis is carried out. Between the firm, focal firm, that is the business organization consider, and competitor one. Focal firm, competitor 2, focal firm, competitor 3, within the markets of A, B, C. Okay, and in that process, the main things that are considered would be, now, when we consider all the competitors as a whole, also we consider market overlaps and resource similarity. Here also, that market overlap means market commonality. Here also we consider the market commonality and resource similarity, and finally the market power that we have. So we see that we first analyze the entire market, then we are analyzing the competitors within the market. Now the key competitors are business organization versus that competitor, each and every competitor. We see here competitor one, focal firm in market A, B, and C, the percentages that the focal firm owns, that is the business organization considered owns. Then in market A, 25%, and competitor one owns 20%. So from 25%, 20%. Market B, 25% we own, then competitor one owns 10%. What is the percentage there? Then market C, our organization owns 50% and competitor one owns 5%. Then what is the percentage there? So when you add all together, it's 0.11. So in the same way you do it for competitor 2, you do it for competitor 3, because we are analyzing each and every competitor. First we did for the entire market. Then we evaluated our competitors. And now we are doing analysis for our most important competitors. And we are doing it one by one. So competitor 3 has the highest market commonality index. Market commonality means it overlaps with our market because competitor 3 has 0.31. So when we consider our market, out of that, 31% of our market is owned by competitor 3 as well. That is market commonality. Then resource significance. Resource significance means resource-wise how similar our competitor is when compared with us. Now we see that production capacity, the focal firm, that is the business organization considered, market A products, they have allocated 23%, market B 35%, market C 42%. Then we see competitor A has allocated for market A 47%, market B 26%, market C 12%. So then we consider out of 23, 47%, out of 35, 26%, out of 42, 12%, then altogether 0.25. So they have the resources that we have 0.25. That is the same, in the same way for competitor 2 and competitor 3 you calculate. Then we see that competitor 1 and competitor 3 have almost similar resource strengths of 0.25 versus 0.23. And competitor 2 has the weakest resource strength of 0.12. Therefore, competitor 2 will not impose significant threats upon the organization with respect to the resources that they have. And then, so now we saw that based on all competitors, now for the market analysis, there were some factors considered. Then from the market, we considered who are the competitors. Then we segmented those competitors into 4 categories. For that also, we use market commonality and resource significance. And now we are considering each and every competitor versus the business organization. So we considered the market overlap and market commonality, in other words, resource significance, and there is another one, market power. Market power is also important to be considered when making a comparison between the business organization considered and the competitor. Here we see return on sales of market A and return on sales on market B. And we see that return on sales on market B is there only for competitor 2. But return on sales on market A is there for all the organizations. So market shares are also given. So market shares for market A is given. Market share for B is given only for competitor 2, because they are the people who have only a market share in market B. Now we see market power index, focal firm, 25% of the focal firm, that is the return on sales is 25% in market A, and market A focal firm's share is 20%. So therefore, the focal firm has 0.05 market power. And then competitor 1, the return on sales on market A is 35%, market share is 40%, then the market power is 0.14. Then competitor 2, I told you, there are 2 products, 2 markets that they are operating in. Now there they say that profit to contribution A to B is, market A to B is 40 to 60. That means 0.4 to 0.6. So 15% is the return on sales for competitor 2, and the market share for competitor 2 is 12%, and from that they are getting only 0.4, because the other 0.6 is from market B, which is a return on sales is 25% and the market share is 30%. So you get 0.6 from there. Then when you add it up, 0.06. Competitor 3 has only return on sales from market A, which is 22%, and a market share of 18%, which is 0.04. So the competitor 1 has the strongest market influence with a market power index of 0.14, and competitor 2 is the weakest, and competitor 3 has a balanced strength compared to the focal firm. The තරාදියකට දැම්මම පේනවා focal firm එකේ 0.05, මේකේ 0.04 කියන්නේ 0.05 වලට සමානයි. එතකොට within the marketplace, the power is more or less similar. So what is the power? So in a quantitative way, they are trying to analyze this, you see. A conceptual framework is developed, variables are brought in, and then it is quantitatively analyzed, a typical quantitative research that they are doing. And so this is the framework. In the framework, there is the analytical model that I spoke to you about, competitor analysis, competitor identification, interfirm analysis, that is the analytic model domain, then the forecast domain. That was the position that they are in, but we have to forecast in future what is going to happen. So for that, ratio analysis is done and you can forecast. So there are the financial lever, capability lever, and efficiency lever that you could use according to Lee. Financial lever means the gearing ratios, liquidity ratios you can use. From the historical information, you can forecast for the future. Capability lever, the asset utilization ratios will say how much you can generate as returns from the assets that are being used within the business. Efficiency lever will show how profitable the venture is and the profits generated through the assets that are being utilized within the business organization. So this is forecasting. Using the historical information, the ratio analysis can be done and then forecast for the future, and thereby strategies could be brought in. So this is the typical quantitative approach. And I'm sure for financial statement analysis also, you would be doing these things. And then you see here something, role of the accounting professional in decision support. Now we see decision support, scenario analysis. In the traditional business organization, we know we need to enter the transactions manually, then reporting is done, then control mechanisms should be brought in, and you don't have, the accounting professional does not have enough time to provide and to engage in, provide information and to engage in and support the decision making process. But with the change in the business landscape, especially with globalization, we know that now when we consider the multinational enterprises, or when there are joint ventures with foreign organizations, there are enterprise resource planning systems where everything is consolidated and it is just automated, everything is automated, and there is very less transaction processing. Reports are automatically generated, and what is important is to do the analysis. That is why these data analytics and things were developed. And now we know that, especially in this COVID-19 pandemic, with that, this decision support has been very important because there is a turbulent business environment. And in that turbulent business environment, things are changing so fast that information should be analyzed and provided for fast decision making so that you will not be a loser within the marketplace. So scenario analysis is done. What is the best case? What is the worst case? What is the possible scenario that may take place? So for that, financial and non-financial information need to be provided. Working in teams, that is multidisciplinary teams like HR people, engineers, marketeers, all these people will come together and would work together and would engage, support in the decision-making process. And that is what actually all these people at MAS, there were so many strategic business units, and each strategic business units had their own functions, but everyone, all these SBUs heading people came together, and after the pandemic hit, they were speaking together, and then they had 7 pillars: HR, supply chain, accounting, communication. Likewise, 7 pillars were there, and all issues were dealt under 7 pillars, whereas everything was so much decentralized before the pandemic. So everything is done in teams now, multidisciplinary teams, more than in the era of globalization. During this era, it is of significant importance due to the volatile business environment. And so in this particular context, how I spoke to you about the importance of competitor analysis, techniques used for competitor analysis, sources of data collection in competitor analysis, problems with competitor analysis, analytical framework for competitor analysis that has been presented by Lee 2018 in the prescribed textbook. And now, in this volatile business environment, understanding of the accounting professional's role in competitor accounting, I brought in some real life examples, but actually in the day-to-day business, Mr. Chamath Sirivardhana is engaged in that process. And that is why I invited him today to engage in this discussion. And actually, he is a star. He is a ACCA professional as well as a chartered accountant. And also, he is a passed out graduate from our department. And I have really experienced how intelligent he is, because when I was lecturing strategic management accounting, he was there as a student, and I know his capabilities. And that is why I last time also invited him, and this time also he is being invited. He's the senior manager and financial reporting and planning at Citizens Development Business Finance PLC. Now, I actually have spoken to you for close to 45 minutes, and I will now stop the recording and then give you over to Sirivardhana, because you know that the recording can be done only for 1 hour. So I will start the recording again when he starts to speak. And most probably he will also speak to you for about 45 minutes. And finally, we will end our presentation. So bear up with me. I will stop sharing my screen so that he can stop sharing. I will stop recording and again start the recording. And thank you for listening to me. So I will stop the recording now.